Number 10. Bloody Mary. We all know the legend. Say Bloody Mary 3 times into a mirror and she'll come kill you. Crap, I've said it 2 times already, gotta be careful. This is a popular folktale, generally used by one kid to scare his or her friends and feel cool. But she was recently introduced in the Batwoman comics, and they did a pretty good job of making her look about as scary as we always imagined. I get that she isn't objectively the most terrifying of villains, since, you know, there are a lot of much freakier and more dangerous villains, but considering how freaked out many of us were by the legend as kids, there will always be a horrified place in my heart for Bloody Mary. Oh crap, I said the name again. No, please! Number 9. Killer Croc. While he wasn't particularly scary in the Suicide Squad film, Killer Croc would be absolutely terrifying if he was real, and closer to the comic version. Over 10 feet tall, with razor sharp teeth, looking like a freaking crocodile chasing after you trying to eat you, yeah, I would be expelling waste through every hole in my body. Sometimes villains just trigger that fight or flight response in us, and this one definitely does. Not that I think our ancestors evolved to be afraid of giant humanoid crocodile monsters, but when I see him, my biology definitely tells me to kill it with fire, or run and hide. Probably that last one. And it probably wouldn't work. Number 8. Id the Selfish Moon. Id is just such a creep. Look at him. At best, he looks like some creepy dude who watches people changing through a telescope, and at worst, he looks like a murderous serial killer. And unfortunately, the latter is probably the more accurate option. Because if a planet doesn't excite him enough, he blows it up and snorts the dust. Something tells me if a giant angry moon showed up and asked us to entertain it or we'd die, we'd probably be a wee bit spooked. Because nobody wants to be blown up and snorted. I mean, I assume. Maybe there's someone out there who's into that, but I'm sorry if that appeals to you, you're weird. Number 7. Saduhem. Saduhem is a Hellboy villain, one of the evil spirits known as the Ogdruhem. He takes on a number of different shapes, each scarier than the last, although normally he presents as a giant terrifying creature with tentacles and claws and suckers and all sorts of nasty things. He kinda looks like Cthulhu, who I really wanted to put on this list but wasn't sure if he'd count as a supervillain, so I went with Saduhem instead. Either way, coming upon a giant tentacle monster that just wants to eat me would be a pretty scarring experience. Number 6. Martin Mad Dog Hawkins. This is one dude that not many people know about, but he is just bone-chilling. He doesn't look as scary as the others on this list and isn't as powerful or accomplished as others, but he is absurdly creepy and terrifyingly psychopathic, not to mention something that could actually happen. Hawkins was actually the man who drove Amadeus Arkham, the creator of Arkham Asylum, insane when he broke into his house, killed his wife, sexually assaulted his daughter, chopped off her head, and put it in a dollhouse as an April Fool's joke. Seeing such a twisted human being who just wants to kill women is really freaky, and the worst part is that it could actually happen. There's even a reference to him in the Arkham Asylum game where a headless statue has Mad Dog written on it. If you want to see more about him, check out Arkham Asylum: A Serious House on Serious Earth. The art is pretty intense. Number 5. Doomsday. Doomsday is definitely one of the freakiest villains out there. First of all, the dude looks terrifying, so dark and evil and spiky. His scary appearance may well have been one of his adaptations. However, not only does Doomsday look scary, but in reality he would be essentially unstoppable. Especially in our world where, you know, we don't have Superman. Once he adapted to our bullets and explosives, it'd be damn near impossible to even scratch the creature. If Doomsday was around today, it's safe to say we'd all be living in fear, although on the bright side, we probably wouldn't be living that long anyway. Yay, silver lining! Number 4. Carnage. It was kind of a tough decision between Venom and Carnage. I didn't want to have both, but definitely needed one of them. I ended up choosing Carnage partly because he looks a bit freakier and partly because he's just way more insane and murderous than Venom. Sure, Venom kills dudes and threatens to eat their brains, but a lot of the time, especially recently, he takes on more of an anti-hero role, or a hero role. On the other hand, Cletus Cassidy, and by extension Carnage, is just a straight up serial killer. So not only does he look like the stuff of nightmares, but if you ran into him, he would almost certainly kill you. But if you're lucky, he'd kill you quickly. Number 3. Styx. Styx, one of the personalities of Legion, is one of the villains that is scary both in appearance and in his abilities. First, just look at him, he's freaky. He's like the Silence from Doctor Who meets Slender Man, except he has a mouthful of sharp teeth and he's naked. So yeah, he's absurdly creepy looking. But what's more is that he can absorb your freaking soul. Just by touching you, he can absorb your soul and control your body, even able to enter the minds of powerful telepaths like Professor X. This is particularly scary for me because as a kid I always had nightmares about a dude called the Brain Sucker who sucked out your brains by touching you. And Styx is eerily similar, so he scares the crap out of me. Number 2. Joker. Joker is definitely not the scariest looking of villains. Eerie? Sure. Crazy? Definitely. Funny? I mean, sometimes I guess, but generally he doesn't look particularly funny. But the Joker is just so damn insane, and murderously so, that you honestly have no way of knowing what he'll do next. Will he just tell you a subtext-heavy joke about people walking across a roof, or will he tie you to a chair, torture you, and make you laugh yourself to death? Who knows? This unpredictability, along with his undeniable genius, makes him absolutely terrifying. And if, on top of all this, you're also afraid of clowns, God help you. Number 1. Scarecrow. Considering fear is kind of the MO of Scarecrow, it's no surprise that he'd find himself on this list. Scarecrow certainly isn't the scariest looking of villains in his normal state, and when played by Cillian Murphy, he's downright dreamy. But he has a few tools to terrify at his disposal. If you ran into Scarecrow and he used his fear gas, suddenly he would become your greatest fear. And you know what they say about people's greatest fear? They're scared of it. Yep, people say that, it's a thing they say. Plus he can turn into a scare beast, a pretty freaky looking monster that naturally emits his fear gas. Now, the Scarecrow is pretty scary, but not as scary as this Scarecrow. That's me, I was in Wizard of Oz. Spooky.
Coming in at number 10, we've got Zebediah Killgrave. There are just so many reasons this sociopath is considered extra creepy. First of all, his skin has been saturated with experimental nerve gas. This chemical compound has caused his body to become purple, giving him an especially sinister look. Something about the color purple seems to really freak people out. Sells horror novels too. Of course, just being purple isn't enough to land on a list of the creepiest villains of all time. No, Killgrave has a whole bunch of awful tendencies that really put him above the rest. The very same nerve gas accident also altered his body chemistry, bestowing upon him some fascinating powers. This violent villain is able to control people's minds using pheromones, leading to some horrible situations. Over time, he learned to use his mind control powers to meet his own needs and became quite cruel and merciless. As one might expect, he makes a lot of folks act way out of character in order to please him. The most famous victim has to be Jessica Jones, who he kept as a sex slave for months on end. Jessica Jones was one of many poor people who the Purple Man forced to do gross things against their will. And if that isn't creepy, I don't know what is. Coming in at number 9, we've got Solomon Grundy. Zombies are creepy, especially when they have human intelligence and seem to keep resurrecting. Solomon Grundy checks all sorts of boxes, from living in sewers to pulling his own limbs off during combat. Imagine the smell too. Grundy has taken on many different forms and caused all sorts of different problems, but you can be sure whatever iteration he shows up as is going to be either scary or nasty. Pallid flesh, drippy liquids, and a need to be as malicious and aggressive as possible. All these things add up to a truly creepy villain. Coming in at number 8, we've got Victor Zsasz. Serial killers are creepy. They've captured the imagination of the nation for ages now, and Victor is no exception. This Batman nemesis is a lanky lunatic who carves a mark into his body for every person he kills. There are marks covering his entire body at this point, so take that as you will. He was once the son of a wealthy couple, but after they died in a boating accident, he became addicted to gambling. Betting everything, he squandered his wealth away and realized that his life was totally devoid of meaning. Before he could kill himself, a homeless man menaced him with a knife, and in this person's eyes, Victor saw emptiness. He took this as a sign that his life was nothing. He and everyone else on Earth were being controlled by forces beyond comprehension. So now he goes around and helps people shuffle off their mortal coils, also known as murders people. A person who's lost all hope for humanity is a dangerous one indeed, especially when they enjoy slitting throats as much as Victor. Coming in at number 7, we've got Muse. Imagine if Banshee was a bloodthirsty maniac. Then add in crazy combat skills and general imperceptibility. Now imagine all these traits packed up into a disgusting, pale, shrivel-faced lad. Now that's the recipe for Muse. A pained artist who uses human blood to create gigantic murals. He loves to create spectacles. And by spectacles, I mean grotesque defilements of the human form. He creates all sorts of bloody art, and then while politicians attempt to prevent access, he kidnaps the judge. He gouges out Blind Spot's eyes. He even breaks all of his fingers, just himself, when he realizes Daredevil wants the horrifying art to stop. And then when he's taken to prison, his creepy creations don't stop. He breaks out, slaughtering some guards in the process, and begins making pro-vigilante pieces adorned with the bodies of cops. Brutal. Coming in at number 6, we've got Professor Pig. Anyone in a pig mask is creepy in my books, but Professor Pig takes it to a whole new level. He's obsessed with perfecting the human form, and of course his idea of perfect is totally warped. To make someone into his ideal person, he replaces their faces with horrible doll faces. Making their form perfect isn't enough though, and he also tends to lobotomize them. Then they become weird, brainless, hypnotizable zombie people. Holy smokes. It almost feels like a Richard Traeger situation for those of you familiar with Outlast. A skilled surgeon absolutely defiling the human form in search of a twisted view of perfection. And he's just totally hideous, with or without the mask. That's a face not even a mother could love, which may have something to do with his insane behavior. Coming in at number 5, we've got the Brood. Oh man, every universe has to have a crazy conqueror race like this. Just a species of constantly consuming creatures who only exist to reproduce and drain planets dry of all their resources. The Brood has been around for thousands of years and have nests on planets across the universe. If they were mindless, it would be one thing, but the Brood enjoy causing pain and suffering. They live for the terror that their infection inspires in hosts. It's like if xenomorphs were even more prolific and loved to cause as much horror as possible. These things are bad news. They'll consume and consume until nothing is left. Coming in at number 4, we've got Nightmare. What's creepier than a Fear Lord? This entity reigned over the Nightmare realm within the Dream Dimension. This demon is able to snag a person's astral form while they're asleep and bring it into his Nightmare realm. And being somewhere like that, not fun. He's kinda like a super version of Freddy Krueger. Nightmare will always exist as long as there are beings that dream. Even if he is defeated, he can never be truly destroyed. Watch out for him tonight. And finally at number 1, we've got Parallax. Also known as the embodiment of fear itself, Parallax exists to cause horror all across the universe. It has existed since the dawn of time and has a history of causing whole civilizations to destroy themselves. The fear and anxiety this fiend can induce literally rips apart societies. Parallax is so good at causing fear, it can easily frighten folks like Superman. A being of pure energy, it has no physical form and will try to change into whatever will scare its target the most. Oh my goodness. And it's yellow in the Green Lantern universe.
Number 10, ManBat. The ManBat is not always a villain of Batman's. He has been known to sometimes be an ally as well. But when Dr. Kirk Langstrom is in his ManBat form, he is always horrifying. So horrifying that the closest thing we got to him was in one of Batman's nightmares from Batman v Superman in the DCEU. However, this wasn't really specified to be ManBat specifically. Dr. Langstrom aimed to create a serum to help the deaf and blind, but accidentally made a serum that also transformed anyone who used it into a giant bat-like creature. Both he and his wife suffer from its effects at one point, becoming the ManBat and She-Bat respectively. It would be cool to see a horror-style Batman film featuring these two monstrous and sometimes villainous characters. Number 8, Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange has a place in the television series Gotham, where he is played by B.D. Wong, and is depicted as the chief of psychiatry at Arkham Asylum. But we have yet to see the insane mad scientist make an appearance in the DC extended universe. Because he is often closely tied these days to Arkham Asylum both in the comics and in the Batman video games, it would be kind of hard to introduce this madman who has a tendency to experiment on patients and transform them into monsters into the DCEU without first introducing the famed Asylum. Hugo is a formidable and frightening Batman foe, not just because of how insane he is, but because of how brilliant he is too.
It's a perfect plan. With this machine, I can imagine Batman to be anyone I choose. And these fools will pay a fortune for it.
He was even able to use his smarts and deductive reasoning to uncover Batman's true identity. Number 7, Mr. Mixie Pizyelik. So, Mr. Mixie might not be horrifying to look at. He's kinda silly looking, truth be told, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be scared of him. He has more power than you can possibly imagine. And in fact, anything that he can imagine can come to pass, should he will it. The only limit to his reality-altering powers are the limitations of his own imagination. Like Batman's Joker, he has at times claimed to be the ultimate Superman foe. In one story to prove this, he even killed all of Superman's enemies and allies just to prove how evil he was. Mr. Mixie also forced Superman to kill him as well, forcing Superman to break his own moral code. Ooh. Talk about being on Joker's terrifying level of ultimate villainy.
Oh, I don't feel so good. But it's still worth it.
Number 6, James Gordon Jr. He might not be on Mr. Mixie's level in terms of his power set, but James Gordon Jr. is one terrifying and creepy villain. As his name implies, he is related to Commissioner Gordon and is in fact his son. Surprisingly, James is not like his dad and grows up instead to become a psychotic serial killer, exhibiting early warning signs from a young age that there is something very wrong with him. He used to pick apart and torture animals and was suspected as being involved in the disappearance of one of Barbara's friends, Bess Keller, though nothing was ever proven. He ends up returning to Gotham and is revealed to be a full-out serial killer who enjoys torturing his victims to death in Black Mirror. Later on, he ends up joining the Suicide Squad and becomes the team's strategy analyzer. Man, I would not want to work with James Gordon Jr. on the Suicide Squad. I'd be like, ugh. No thanks. Number 5. Papa Midnight. Papa Midnight is a villain to John Constantine for the most part. Sometimes he's an ally, but more often he's not, as the man is obsessed with power and is a pretty bad dude. Papa Midnight grew up in Trenchtown, Jamaica. Born Linton Midnight, from a young age he became inspired by tales of dark magic that his parents had told him. He betrayed a group of slaves, conning them into believing that they would be protected if they rebelled, which led to their deaths, and later went on to sell his sister's soul into demon slavery, so that he could achieve more power for himself through using her soul as a barter chip, selling it to the demons of hell. Ooh. Considering how violent and insidious Papa Midnight is, we likely won't be seeing him in the DCEU, although he has managed to make an appearance in the CW Arrowverse, which is pretty impressive. Number 4. Crib. How does one even make a villain like Crib in the DCEU, just from a visual standpoint? Like, ooh, that'd be a lot of effects, I think. Crib is a member of the Sinestro Corps. She is described as being an alien hag and is 100% something out of a nightmare. Lots of Baba Yaga vibes here as well. However, instead of being associated with eating children, as Baba Yaga sometimes is, Crib's purpose is to kidnap the newly born children of Green Lanterns who are also parents. Crib will even go to the lengths of giving her pregnant victims 4 cesareans in order to secure their children. Ugh. She keeps the kidnapped newborns in her hunchback, which looks like a creepy bone crib, and promptly kills the parents of any children whom she has taken away. What's more disturbing is it's never explained why Crib has this compulsion. It's just something she feels inspired to do. I guess she doesn't think Green Lanterns make for great parents? She's like, I'll be a way better parent to these babies with my weird bone crib. Super qualified. Number 3. Dollmaker. Dollmaker has a horrific origin, which makes it hard to introduce him without going full horror film mode. When Barton Mathis was young, he would go camping with his father, who it turns out was a serial killer. While camping, Barton would not only witness his father kill people, but also commit acts of cannibalism. He also saw his father killed when apprehended by the police. Years later, Mathis would grow up to be a gifted but deranged surgeon who was obsessed with using his victims' body parts to craft dolls. He wears a mask made of human skin and was the one who helped Joker to remove his face during the lead up to the death of the family storyline. Number 2. A Black Lantern Corps. One of the most terrifying villain groups, both appearance-wise and in terms of their threat level, is the Black Lantern Corps. Of course, this would be a hard supervillain group to introduce, being that we'd likely need Green Lanterns to be on the scene to help explain, well, just who the Black Lantern Corps are, and why we should care about them. After all, you can't defeat the Black Lantern Corps anyways without the entire emotional spectrum of lanterns assembled to help create that White Lantern power. This threat might also just be too huge and horrific to make an appearance due to the sheer size of their numbers. In the Blackest Night storyline, they were like an overwhelmingly sized zombie apocalypse level of threat, killing heroes and resurrecting them to join their deadly ranks. Number 1. Batman Who Laughs. It might be a little too confusing for the DCEU to introduce the Batman Who Laughs, as that would mean they'd likely have to involve the Dark Multiverse somewhere in their films, and the Dark Multiverse is likely too dark even for DC to make that happen on the big screen. The Batman Who Laughs is an alternate version of Batman who was infected by Joker venom after being pushed too far by the villain, causing him to lash out and kill the Joker, snapping his neck. This caused Batman to become infected, driving him insane and causing him to take down his own world's Justice League and kill his own Bat family, save for Damian Wayne, who he convinced to join him. He's one of the biggest bads in DC's current storylines.
Number 10. Vermin. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now, it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides, However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan, since his introduction, has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the One Below All in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 7. Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian Elder God would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal, however, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the spirit bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to tide yourself over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. Gore the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, Gore was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, Gore completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, Gore was needless to say pretty mad, and when the one god asked for help, Gore actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as Gore the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, Gore absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as Gore absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life: Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now, I doubt Gore will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor: God of Thunder number 2. Number 4. Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks, or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight, of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now, I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Number 3. The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now, I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the Negative Zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four number 1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates number 1. Number 2. The Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power, elastic and multi-sensory skin. Designated weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pizer went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pizer took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force number 34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the Skinless Man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force number 21. And finally, number 1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so I feel like we won't get to see this character on the big screen anytime soon.
Kicking off the list at number 10, the Time Trapper. First appearing in Adventure Comics 317, the Time Trapper comes from the far future. He actually prevented the Legion of Superheroes from traveling into their future using an iron curtain of time. He likes to hang out at his home located safely at the end of time. How neat is that? Kind of similar to Kang. In his first few issues, the Time Trapper was seeking the Concentrator, which was a weapon that draws energy, any energy source in the known universe, together. It's also a pretty big secret as well. The Time Trapper pretended to be the commissioner of the Science Police and tortured the Legionnaires, although they said it was a test in order to gain intel. Now, Lightning Lad knew something was fishy, so he cracked and spilled secrets, false ones of course. So this brought the team to actually figure out how to assemble the real Concentrator. And when an angry Time Trapper returned, he launched a plethora of Dark Stars at the crew, but luckily that Concentrator could absorb any energy source, like I said, so they were blasted out of existence. We're good. The Legion lived to tell the tale, but we just got Kang in the MCU, so I don't think we need another Time Lord showing up. My brain hurts enough already. Give us like 5 years and then bring in some more time stuff. Number 9, Eclipso. Making his first appearance in House of Secrets issue 61, Eclipso was made from God's spirit of wrath. He's the living embodiment of wrath. It doesn't get more menacing than that, folks. He was made to punish the wicked, to clean the world of evil, of course, until the Spectre replaced him. Wrath was driven by anger, whereas vengeance, that required more of a discerning hand. So what happened after was Wrath's physicality was trapped within an all-black diamond called the Heart of Darkness. The Heart of Darkness, kind of like the heart of the ocean, but instead of Rose tossing it overboard, a treasure hunter found it in Africa and accidentally split it into 1,000 pieces, and now we're all... Each of those pieces contained a shard of darkness. So Eclipso figured out a way to possess people through these diamonds, and that first man being possessed was Bruce Gordon. Bruce was a scientist specializing in solar energy, and while he was in a jungle observing a solar eclipse, a sorcerer named Mofir attacked him with one of those black diamonds, and after that, every eclipse, Eclipso would take over Bruce. Unbeknownst to Bruce though, Eclipso would soon learn to bind himself to anybody near any shard that happened to be angry at the time. Nowadays there's a lot of angry folks, so this is bad news. The entity of wrath possessing anybody who gets upset, that sounds, yeah, just smile and wave, I guess. Just lie and pretend you're happy, then you're good.
Before we continue on with this list, if you want to spread the love and hit that thumbs up, it really does wonders for us at the channel. You guys are amazing. Thanks so much for watching. Let's keep this going. Number 8, Justice Lord Superman. Coming from the animated universe, the 2003 Justice League episode titled A Better World showed us one that's rather the opposite. This parallel universe showed Kal-El and the Justice Lord storming the White House after President Lex Luthor had just executed the Flash. Now the team of course wasn't too happy, so Batman and Wonder Woman fought off the Secret Service while Superman told Luthor that he's taken him in. Lex is insane, so he had a button ready that could literally start a nuclear war if it was pressed. And he's threatening Superman, saying that he needs to use deadly force if he wants to save the people. So Superman's like, okay, and then just eyes glow red, and then he turns them into ashes, just like that. And when Batman and Wonder Woman come back in, it's far too late. Superman just has a smile on his face, and Lex is just a pile of dust. Good times. After this, for the next 2 years, the Justice Lords would rule using violence like it was normal. They saw this and they're like, well, that certainly did the trick. Let's just keep doing that. Justice Lord Superman used his heat vision to wipe out all of Earth's criminals and villains. If we had him in the DCEU, the movie would be a lot shorter than 4 hours. It would be like 36 minutes. Snyder cut, maybe 44 minutes. Number 7, Superboy Prime, another super menace. First appearing in DC Comics Presents issue 87, this version of Supes has more powers and less weaknesses. I'm talking immunity to kryptonite and magic, which is a fantastic combo. He arrived to Earth and was soon discovered by Jerry and Naomi Kent while they were on a hike in a New England seacoast town. They named him Clark, although Clark Kent was the name of a popular comic book hero named Superman. So yeah, Superman already existed on this Earth, so Clark grew up and later attended a costume party at a beach and dressed like Superman. He went to get a glimpse of Halley's Comet and it was all a good time, and then all of a sudden a tidal wave hits, this portal opens up, and the Superman from the comics pops out. Now at the same time, young Clark's powers manifested and he quickly learned what to do with them in the moment. Superboy then followed that Superman back into the portal to an alternate reality, and he would never be the same again. Crisis on Infinite Earths was this multiversal catastrophe where parallel dimensions were being consumed by the AntiMonitor, who I'll talk about later. Superboy dove in, joined the fight, but was unable to prevent the destruction of his Earth. So Superboy Prime and other survivors escaped to a paradise dimension that Alexander Luthor Jr. offered. Using crystals, Superboy just relived happy times in this paradise, but eventually he got frustrated and shattered the barrier of reality. He literally punched everything apart. He retconned quite a bit in DC continuity. For example, he brought back Jason Todd, he combined Superman's origins, Doom Patrol was now rebooted, and we had numerous incarnations of Hawkman and the League of Superheroes. I feel like DC could use a big bad Superboy Prime punch to clear up the timeline, but hopefully the Flash movie does that, because this guy is just a little too crazy. Number 6, Brainiac. Another close rival of Superman's, Brainiac made his first appearance in Action Comics 242. This guy right off the bat is a very specific villain. He would love to steal cities. Yeah, watch out for your cities, keep them safe, put them under your mattress. He took Metropolis at one point. This guy's wild. He would use his shrinking ray, zoom, shrink your city, and then take them back to his planet. Vril Doc started his days as a scientist, and one day he successfully cloned himself because he needed an assistant, so who better to hire than yourself? He built the spaceship next and traveled to the cosmos, gaining knowledge and studying alien organisms with the help of his robot drones, and during these travels he came across Krypton while General Zod was still running the show. So of course, this dude shrunk down the entire city of Kandor and studied it in his ship. He made a remote scout unit that believed it was the original Vril Docs, and then it traveled to Earth and took over the body of sideshow mentalist Milton Fine, whose stage name was Brainiac. Now it makes sense. Number 5, Necron. Also known as the Lord of the Unliving. Great. Necron made his first appearance in Tales of the Green Lantern Corps issue 2. He's literally the embodiment of death. Necron figured out the land of the living existed after the death of an immortal caused a rift to open between dimensions. So Necron saw all of this life and he was like, this looks tasty. He wanted it. Well, really he wanted to master it and get out of his hell, his literal hell that he was living in. So he resurrected Kronos, even throwing in a classy army of the dead to assist in taking down the Guardians of the Universe. Taking them down ended up widening the rift, so it took all the Green Lantern Corps to stop them, but even after winning, countless lives were lost in this fight. Hal Jordan ended up going to the land of the unliving, accepting the possibility that he may just never return, and there he gathered the souls of other fallen lanterns, and it was just enough to fight off Necron and return, with the Guardians sealing the rift promptly afterwards. But like Necron says, you can never defeat death. Back in 2009, it was revealed Necron was behind the Black Lanterns and instigated the Blackest Night event. There he took over the bodies of Wonder Woman and Superman while also bringing back dead heroes to join his side. Number 4. Prometheus. Helmets are pretty important, especially in combat, and especially if one helmet in particular gave you the skills to beat, I don't know, Batman. Prometheus first appeared in New Year's Evil, Prometheus issue 1 back in the late 90s, and at first he was just the son of two criminals who traveled across the US, real Bonnie and Clyde style. But as a kid he would have to go with them, right, because they couldn't afford a babysitter. They were rich with like mob money, but they couldn't afford a babysitter. Okay, so eventually the police caught on and they were never seen again. The police killed them in front of the boy, almost like a darker Bruce Wayne origin. So he grew up with their fortune, only it was a stolen fortune. Then he traveled the world, trained as a fighter, trained as a mercenary. He learned a dozen different languages and he was pretty skilled by the end of it. Then he found the ancient city of Shambhala where their monks studied evil. They trusted him and showed him their greatest treasure, which was an alien ship. Not too bad. Their leader was actually an alien in disguise. He landed there, but Prometheus had to kill him to obtain the key to enter the Ghost Zone. The Ghost Zone was this infinite expanse of white emptiness, the space between dimensions. Kryptonians called this the Phantom Zone. And in there, Prometheus built himself a house, a costume, and his first advanced helmet that downloads info to take on the Justice League. He was great, like he shot Martian Manhunter so then he couldn't change, he infected Steel's armor with a virus, he hypnotized Huntress, and he hit Green Lantern with a neural shaft so his ring was useless. He also trapped Zoriel in said Ghost Zone and beat Batman with hand-to-hand combat. Not too shabby at all. Number 3. The Batman Who Laughs. We've seen quite a few Batman on screen. We're even seeing Michael Keaton return to Gotham in the next Flash movie, which is pretty exciting. But the Batman Who Laughs, aka The Darkest Knight, might be a bit too hardcore for the theaters. Coming from the Dark Multiverse, first appearing in Dark Days The Casting, created by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo, comes a twisted Earth 22 version of the Batman Who Laughs. The Joker here is insane. He goes on this spree throughout Gotham, just chaos in the streets. He took out Jim Gordon, then he poisoned Batman. Was all bad, and then once Batman was able to move again after the poison had run its course, he broke the Joker's neck, which is already immediately so dark. But even the Joker was prepared after death. After that snap, he let out this toxic breath that let everybody near him get infected, including Batman. Cut to 2 days later, Batman and Superman are talking about what happened, and when Superman tells Bruce that a kid infected by Joker bit a doctor, Bruce ends up laughing, like this maniacal laugh. And he catches himself after, he's like, sorry about that. Superman knows something's off here, but a day later, Bruce called the team to the Batcave and went full on Omni-Man. He took out the entire team before anybody caught on to his new and violent personality. Number 2. The AntiMonitor. Making his first appearance in Crisis on Infinite Earths issue 2, the AntiMonitor was DC's excuse to cut out a lot of fat from the comics, basically. The multiverse was introduced back in the 60s. The Golden Age heroes were residing on Earth 2, and then came Earth 3, and then so on and Danforth. So when Crisis on Infinite Earths came around, DC Comics introduced this big bad cosmic villain to set something straight going forward. Clean up the multiple timelines, makes sense. Now it all started when Kronos performed this experiment. They wanted to see the origin of the universe, but instead an opposite universe was created, the antimatter universe. AntiMonitor wanted nothing but death and destruction, and after battling his brother for, say, I don't know, 1 billion years, they both fell unconscious. And then 9 billion years later, they were woken up. When they tried to destroy Earth 1, many heroes lost their lives, and in order to stop that chaos, Superman had to punch them into a star. Who knows, with the Flash opening up the multiversal door, we could see him on the big screen in our lifetime. Maybe. And finally, number 1, Perpetua. Of course, one of the most feared beings in the greater Omniverse. Also known as the First Creator, she made her first appearance in Justice League Volume 4, Issue 8. She was the mother of the Monitor, AntiMonitor, and World Folder. She was actually one of the hands that created the multiverse, literally. Each member were these celestial beings and they would pass on and their energy would return to the source, but Perpetua was different. She wanted a dark, vicious reality that would live forever. So she created the first iteration of the multiverse using negative crisis energies and then had 3 cosmic children. She was creating an army also to rule over the multiverse, so her children snitched. Yeah, they told the judges of the source, and Perpetua was locked away outside the source wall with her negative energies. But even locked away, she was able to connect to Lex Luthor, who believed freeing her would make him a hero on some multiversal scale. So next time you want to kick somebody out of your party, just banish them to the source wall with their negative energy. That's how he works. Kicking off the list at number 10, Giganta. Dora Zuul made her first appearance in Wonder Woman Volume 2, Issue 126. She's a supersized villain. She's literally a giant, if her name didn't already tip you off for that. She was once suffering from a fatal blood disease, so in order to try and save herself, she attempted to transfer her life essence into the body of Wonder Woman, which I gotta say, great call. As far as vessels go, that's a pretty good one to use. Because Wonder Woman at this time was in a coma. She was being held at the experimental medical facility where Zuul was working, so it kinda, it was worth a shot. Now during this process, Wonder Girl came in and interrupted it, so instead Zuul's life essence was transferred into a giant test gorilla named Giganta. I can't even say that with a straight face. So instead, Zuul's life essence was now transferred into a giant test gorilla named Giganta. Oops. Now of course, this was a no-go, so her next idea was to transfer herself again, but this time to a strong circus lady named Olga. The transfer worked and Doris could now turn into a giant because Olga apparently could do so before. I think we're okay without giants. I think anything with giants we're just gonna keep out. If it doesn't have a cape, then no. That's it. Number 9. Psychop Pirate. Psychop Pirate. Charles Halstead made his first appearance in All-Star Comics issue 23. He first showed up in the golden age of comics. He was originally an employee of Rex Morgan, who ran a newspaper company called The Daily Career. He wanted more success, of course, so he made the alias Psychop Pirate, and he started to use emotions as a theme for crimes. That sounds intimidating, I think. So the Justice Society would solve crimes based on emotions. That doesn't sound too powerful for the DCEU. If anything, it sounds a little boring where we're heading now. The new Psychop Pirate came out in Superboy Volume 6, issue 23, and he was much different. Roger Hayden can now control emotions, which is a big upgrade. Psychop Pirate is aware that the universes have changed, like he saw the nature of reality die and then get reborn, like New Crisis, Flashpoint, all that good stuff. He was just stuck in the universe watching it all fold and then unfold again. The reality created by Dr. Manhattan's timeline tampering had Roger as a member of the 20, a group of Metropolis citizens infected with Brainiac's psionic virus. So now Hayden can alter your emotions using the Medusa mask. He's getting better and better. The first mask was an artifact stolen from the Metropolis Museum of Art. That mask gave him godly abilities, and we see this in Superman Volume 3, issue 24. Now the second mask used was from Batman Volume 3, and that mask was more of a tool to help him channel his own ability to change others' emotions. Medusa mask or Majora's mask? Which would you rather own? It's a close one. And before we continue on with this list, you know the drill. Go ahead and give us a thumbs up if you're loving this part 2, which you should be if you're still on board. Those likes surely add up and help us out here at the studio, so thank you so much. Now let's get right back to this list. Number 8, Super Doom. Coming from Earth 45, this Superman was a project gone wrong. He first appeared in Action Comics Volume 2, issue 9, when Jimmy Olsen created a machine that turns thoughts into reality. All these thought machines and emotion machines, it's a bit odd, but I like it. So the gang decided to make a robot Superman next with that machine. They ended up selling this device to Overcorp, which made it into Superman: The Last Night of Tomorrow, aka the monstrous Super Doom. Overcorp used him to take over the planet, but still, that wasn't enough. Super Doom entered the bleed space, where he would then search the multiverse for its creators, destroying planets and other versions of Superman like Optiman of Earth 36 and Superman of Earth 42. But eventually it came to Earth 23 and had to go toe-to-toe with their Superman, President Calvin Harris. I'm all for evil Supermans in a nightmare sequence, but Super Doom might be a little bit too much. I don't know. Number 7, Relic. Ancient enemy of the Green Lantern Corps, Relic made his first appearance in Green Lantern Volume 5, issue 21. He's been around for a while, like before space-time. I'm talking like a while. Before all this, he was a scientist in his universe who believed that harnessing the emotional electromagnetic spectrum was a bad idea. He figured it would lead to tragedy, and given others on this list, I have to say, he was kind of onto something. So he thought all these other lightsmiths were drawing their power from a specific place, and eventually that place would run dry. Guy's a futurist, what can I say? So he searched the cosmos far and wide trying to prove his own theory, and he had universal support backing it. But nothing was jumping out at him. There was no solutions. He didn't really come across anything until one by one the 7 core lightsmiths began losing their powers. The only living being left after that war was a lone green lightsmith. So Relic then passed to the next universe and he was remade as a giant, kind of like Zuul. We love giants. He was first found by White Lantern Kyle Rayner in the Templar Guardians. But he didn't want what happened to the Lightsmiths to happen here, so he traveled to Oa where he warned the Green Lantern Corps that they should surrender their power rings. And they of course were like, no, get out of here, peace. And then in turn, Relic forcefully drained their powers and destroyed their planet. Either one way or another, I guess it's happening. Okay, Relic, sure. Number 6, Volum. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern Annual Volume 5, Issue 1, Volum was an ancient force that had the ability to warp reality. Sweet. He was originally from Earth 15, and after his world was on the brink of destruction, so him and his mother used the newly discovered emotional electromagnetic spectrum, which is a multiversal force powered by all life in the multiverse, and then they used this power to create the travel lantern, and Volum left to find safety while his mother stayed behind and unfortunately, in superhero fashion, died right as he left. This first lantern traveled for weeks through space and time in desperate hopes to find something to save his home. So he goes to Earth 17 and he uses the spectrum to resurrect plant life, which is cool, but then next he travels to Earth 47 and they use the spectrum to create beautiful music, also pretty cool. And then he went to Earth 3 where he met a sorcerer named Mordu, in which he creates a power ring out of a piece of his soul, that ring of course being called the Ring of Volum. You're not going to name it after somebody else, so it's only fair. He finally found Earth 0 where he acted as the law and order. Eventually Volum's mind was corrupted from the spectrum and he became insane. I feel like anybody who has a ring in general just ends up going insane. Like Lord of the Rings, it's like, come on. Number 5, Atrocitus. What a name! Okay, he must be a gentle soul. Atrocitus entered DC Comics back in Green Lantern Volume 4, Issue 25. He is the leader and founder of the Red Lantern Corps, the red power ring fueled by nothing else but rage. So since the death of his family, he's been after the Guardians of the Universe. His family was residing in the ever so peaceful sector 666. Kronos, one of the Guardians of the Universe who I talked about in part 1, reprogrammed manhunters to extinguish life. So when they all went nuts, this was one of the many worlds destroyed. He was one of the 5 survivors left on Sector 666, so together they became the 5 inversions. They soon became known as the Empire of Tears, which sounds like a punk rock boy band, but in reality they were performing rituals to see the future, like the Blackest Night Prophecy and stuff like that. Atrocitus created the Red Lantern Corps, but he's also really known for corrupting Sinestro. Number 4, Oblivion. Making his first appearance in Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Issue 2 back in 2014, Oblivion is made of Kyle Rayner's rage, fear, and anxiety, all rolled into one. Lovely. He's the physical form of all those traits, and he even believed himself to be Kyle Rayner. He stayed at this guy's apartment and he even tricked Carol into thinking that he was the real deal. He has powers that allow him to shapeshift, obviously, but he can also teleport and project vast amounts of energy that match a white lantern. He can also create illusions of objects and people. He can make anything he wants. You're going to be very confused if you go on a dinner date with this guy. One day, Oblivion teleported Carol and himself to Arizona, where he used his powers to change everybody's appearance, and he even changed buildings all around him. No thanks, we don't want any of that in the DCEU. Sounds fun, but sounds kinda unfixable. Number 3, Mongol. The insane ruler of Warworld. Yeah, he's for sure making this list. He first appeared back in the 80s in DC Comics Presents Issue 27. He was a Superman villain who was exiled into outer space by his own people. A man called the Archimandrite came along, took it over, and from that point on the planet was just a cruel wasteland. Mongol drifted through space, and over his cosmic commute he picked up immense powers along the way until he eventually arrived on the 5th planet of the Cygnus system, where the Martian race protected the Crystal Key. The Crystal Key was the only way to gain access to the planet Warworld. So Mongol kidnapped Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, and Steve Lombard in order to get Superman to punch those Martians out of the way. Martian Manhunter ended up freeing Superman's friends, but by the time everything was done, they were all so low energy that they still couldn't fight Mongol, so he got the key and teleported away. It took both Superman and Supergirl to destroy Warworld, but Mongol ended up escaping anyways. I think I like this guy, but he might be a bit too strong for the DCEU, but hey, never say never. Number 2, Kronos. If you do the crime, you're doing the time, but if you have enough time, you can plan said crime out in detail, and maybe you won't even get caught for that crime. Confused? That's what time does. David Clinton first entered DC Comics with the Atom Issue 3. He's mainly a villain for Ray Palmer. Now, he was a criminal his entire life, but finally he was arrested, thrown in the slammer where he had time to think. Maybe a bit too much time, because then he reflected on all of his past crimes and what he would have done differently had he planned it better. And he used his skills and obsessions with timepieces to work non-stop in the prison workshop. So he learned about Crocs, time, anything, the mechanisms within them, all that good stuff. And when his sentence was up, he was released and then became a time-traveling villain. He used time-inspired weapons, like literally, he used an exploding hourglass or a wristwatch filled with blades instead of hands, and he also had a device that could literally slow down time. And then he started going by the new name Kronos. In the DC animated universe, he used these devices to go back in time and steal rare relics from the past. At one point he tried stealing a utility belt from the Justice League's watchtower, but when he was interrupted he made a break for it through a time vortex, but Green Lantern, Batman, and Wonder Woman followed him back through there. We mentioned a time guy on part 1, so part 2, we gotta throw another one in. It's the law. And finally, number 1, Grail. We finally got to see Darkseid in the Snyder Cut, but is it too soon perhaps if we meet his daughter? Am I asking for too much? I don't know. She's pretty badass. She made her comic book debut in Justice League Volume 2 issue 40 back in 2015. She was born at the exact same time as Wonder Woman in Divergence issue 1. The Amazonian assassin Marina gave birth to Grail in secret with help from Penelope and Menelope. Marina had to defend her child because Penelope heard the prophecy from Menelope, so apparently this child would cause mass destruction when she grew up. Okay, sure. Marina took Menelope out, so she wasn't really a concern anymore, but afterwards Marina left Themyscira with her daughter, making it the first time Amazons have left the island. In Justice League Volume 2 issue 40, Grail teamed up with the AntiMonitor and declared war on her own father. Nice. Being a hybrid of an Amazon and a new god, she's got powers from both. It's quite intimidating. She's destroyed Wonder Woman's bracelets with Omega beams, and she can travel through dimensions by locking onto those connected to the Speed Force. She can literally hitch a ride through time, so there's no winning this battle, either in the future or the past. Kicking off the list at number 10, Silver Banshee. First appearing in Action Comics 595, and in usual comic book fashion, she's immediately catcalled by some gross dudes. She literally looks like a demon, and the guy in the middle is like, tall broads, I love them. Huh. She proceeds to choke the life out of him because she has this fancy ability where one touch is all it takes to kill you. Neat. Heads up 7-Up would be an extreme sport with Siobhan. So she keeps on walking, she continues to a bookstore, of course killing another dude by, palming his head for a hot second. People run out of the store and they're talking about her voice, how it's the weirdest sound that they've ever heard. See, it's not her touch that kills, it's her voice. See, in IMAX, this would just be a treat. Just a woman screaming into the camera for 4 hours. I'll take it, debit. She's not to be messed with. She straight up killed Superman in her first comic book appearance. This is why you try and avoid curses when you're a child, or else you turn into a Silver Banshee and then in turn you have no friends, which is no fun. Number 9, Knockout. First appearing in comics with Superboy Volume 4, Knockout was a dancer working at a club called the Boom Boom Room. It's clear right off the bat that she possesses super strength. But she was having fun at this club. She saw Superboy on TV and thought that he was a little cutie. In fact, she actually doesn't believe that Superboy has ever met a girl like her in his life. And she's probably right. She fought Superboy a bit because she was into it, but later on she was much more of a threat when she joined the Suicide Squad for missions against the crime cartel Silicon Dragons. Once issue 2 rolls around, flirting turns into something pretty serious. She's fighting Superboy and she says that she's glad that she lives here now. Here, so where did she used to live? Well, she used to live in Apocalypse. Fun fact, she was also one of Granny Goodness's female Furies, but after Big Barda left with Mr. Miracle, she too decided that she wanted out. And she was punished for this, of course, so she got chained up to the walls of the fire pits, but eventually she broke free. The second she broke free, she leaped into the fire, and then she was transported via boom tube to Hawaii. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, because it really does help us out quite a bit. And also, we're on to part 3, so if you want to keep seeing more of these, keep hitting that thumbs up, then we know what to do. You're the best. Now back to this list. Number 8, Ultra Humanite. Superman's first recurring nemesis during the 40s, and yes, I'm even talking before Lex Luthor. Buckle up. This genius made his first appearance in Action Comics 13 way back in 1939. His real name wasn't known at first, Mr. Mysterious Man, but this man was gifted with one of the greatest criminal minds ever. He even developed low-level telepathy. He was a hard thinker, but his physical body couldn't keep up, and he quickly became old and withered, so he got other people to do his deeds. That was him in the old days. Now, Ultra Humanite in Power Girl Volume 2 is much different. Here his name is Gerard Shugel, same scientific origin, same failing body, yada yada. But if it wasn't obvious, this time around he experimented with some animals in his origin, and he moved his powerful brain into a massive white gorilla's body. We have Gorilla Grodd in the CW verse, so maybe we'll get a mighty gorilla genius in the DCEU. Sounds terrifying, never say never. Number 7, Solomon Grundy. Killed in 1895 and then tossed into a swamp. Rough. Cyrus Gold was gone for 50 years before he came back to life. We're talking zombies now, let's do it. He made his first appearance in All American Comics issue 61. Cyrus was having an affair at the time and met up with Rachel, the other girl, to talk about what they're going to do now that she's pregnant. So Rachel wanted money in order to keep quiet, and Cyrus wasn't on board. So Rachel's friend stepped out of the bushes, hit Solomon on the head, and he fell into Slaughter Swamp. Great name for a swamp, where he would then lay dead for 50 years. Over time, Gold's body started to mix with the sour vegetation of the, Slaughter Swamp, so he was just churning and turning into a zombie. He came back as this zombie beast with no recollection of his past life, so when he stumbles across a camp, the only thing he can remember when asked his name was that he was born on a Monday. Oddly specific, but we're here for it. The other guy who asked his name mentions the nursery rhyme Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. Could it be? And it rhymes, therefore it stays. Number 6. Emerald Empress. Making its first appearance in Adventure Comics 352, the Emerald Eye of Ekron is an extremely powerful weapon. Right off the bat, I gotta talk about this. It's one of the best to ever exist in the universe. It's similar to the Green Lantern power ring, so when Saria gets a hold of it, trouble ensues. Originally from the planet Vengar, the Emerald Empress was the most wanted female criminal in the history of the universe. Which, put that on a resume, that's a pretty big achievement. Her homeworld was the site of the long-dead Ekron civilization, whose secrets were supposedly lost, all for the Emerald Eye of Ekron, of course. The eye will do whatever Saria wants it to, and it follows her around and gives her the ability to fly and hang out in space safely. The eye fixes itself after it breaks, so don't think about hitting it with a big hammer and then calling it a day. The eye has taken down Superboy before, and if we don't have a Green Lantern in the DCEU yet, I think it might be too soon for the Emerald Empress to start eyeballing the league, perhaps. Number 5. Poison Ivy. Bridget Regan has recently been cast as Poison Ivy and Batwoman on the CW, so perhaps she could join the DCEU soon as well. Fingers crossed on that one. When it comes to powerful villains, Pamela Isley packs a mean green punch. She made her first appearance in the pages of Batman back in issue 181. Now she began her days as an only child to a wealthy family, hot start already, but by the time she reached college, she was studying botany. She eventually fell in love with one of her professors, Mark Legrand, and one day she went so far to steal some special herbs from a museum in order to help him with an experiment. But of course, Mark was the worst guy in existence and used that herb to poison Pamela. She of course became immune to all diseases and toxins after this. Those were her original origins. Now her post-crisis origins were even darker. Can you imagine? That professor this time around was Jason Woodrow, later known as the Floronic Man, made Pamela a test subject for experiments. So straight up torture in her origins. This made her even darker once she did get her abilities, and this time around she hated men as well. So she would seduce them with her powers and make them do the crimes. She once made her boyfriend grow fungi in his lungs while he was driving, and I couldn't think of a worse way to go. Fungi? I'm gonna throw up. Number 4. Killer Frost. Crystal Frost, the OG version, made her first appearance back in Firestorm issue 3. She was a student at Hudson University who fell in love with one of her professors, only he was married, so he wasn't really interested. Crystal, after this, was upset. She was rejected, and now she wants to start hating every dude on the planet as well. Later on, she was a scientist working in the Arctic, where she again was reunited with that same professor. Then she accidentally got locked inside a thermofrost chamber, and then in comic book fashion got the ability to project waves of freezing cold air. Cool, Frozone, but with attitude. We love it. Her first goal was to take out that professor, but he was one half of the superhero Firestorm. So she was beat at first, but once she met up with the secret society of supervillains, she was able to go head to head with the Justice League. Louise Lincoln's version of Killer Frost was in Batman Assault on Arkham, and a good amount of those Suicide Squad members are now in the DCEU, so hopefully we see her soon. It could happen. She's next in line. Number 3. Barbatos. Also referred to as the Bat God, heyo, this epic force resides in the dark multiverse. Now we're getting more into the big guys, I guess. So the World Forger was set to watch over the vast universes, and while some of them held up in their own ways, there are some worlds that just were naturally unstable. So what do you do next? You get a giant stick and then poke them and push them out of the universe? No, of course not. You send a dragon to destroy it. That way the energy can then return to said forge. Not a bad gig. Now sometimes you like your job a little bit too much, destroying planets and all, and this was the case for said Bat God. He ended up killing his master, and that was just the kickoff. He then had a real taste for destruction, and then he corrupted the Forge of Worlds. So now with the Bat God not destroying these worlds and sending that energy back sometimes, these worlds would end up becoming part of the Dark Universe. His journey begins with Dark Days the Casting issue 1, and it's mind-bending. Go check it out. Number 2. Cyborg Superman. Hank Henshaw made his first appearance in Adventures of Superman issue 465. He was a scientist, astronaut, team leader of the Excalibur crew. He was joined on this LexCorp space mission by his wife and 2 others. Now they hit some cosmic radiation and in turn their shuttle crashed. 2 of the passengers' bodies turned into cosmic radiation, then the other turned into a gravel spaceship part anomaly, which I gotta say, one gets cosmic powers, the other turns into a bunk bed Ben Grimm. That's not fair at all. Hank's wife Terry was one of the 4 hit with the cosmic radiation, but she seemed fine afterwards for a little bit. That's important. Hank's hair also only turned white, so they were both lucky, all things considered. The crew then went to Metropolis to use the LexCorp facilities and hopefully fix their friend and crewmate's cosmic problem. The team ended up clashing with Superman. They were all decaying rapidly, everybody's scared, so of course they're gonna freak out a little bit. Steven flew into the sun. He felt attracted to its powers and then flew into his own death, like a moth. All that cosmic stuff, he was like, and then he just disappeared. Hank manages to tip Superman off right before he decays, so they were only able to save Terry. Jim didn't want to live as a space shuttle rock cluster anymore, so he walked into a MRI scanner, just ended his own life. Really tragic stuff. Terry was now the only survivor of this cosmic nightmare, but in Adventures of Superman issue 468, it was revealed Hank lived through iCloud. Basically, he transferred his consciousness to LexCorp's mainframe, and then he took over NASA's equipment and beamed his mind into the birthing matrix, the pod that carried Superman from Krypton to Earth. So now he was able to travel the cosmos and just learn about local life forms and their history. He eventually came to the conclusion that Superman was in fact evil and he needed to be stopped. After Superman died battling Doomsday, Hank claimed to be Superman Reborn, and of course people bought it, because look at him. This is why you back your phone up, people, in case you become an astronaut and your best friend turns into a ball of space junk. You don't want that happening. And finally, number 1, Mr. Mxyzptlk. This man of mystery made his first dazzling appearance in Superman Volume 2, issue 11. At first sight, he seems like an ordinary man with an excellent beard and jawline. He's in the office with Lois and Clark, he's the new guy, and right as Lois and Clark are about to leave and go for their lunch date, this random dude starts to rub Lois's feet. Normal office behavior, sure, and then even weirder, Lois bails on Clark. Now she wants to go to lunch with Foot Rub Ronnie. So they go to lunch and they come back 4 hours later, and at this point Lois still doesn't know anything about this man somehow. She's oblivious also to a guerrilla attack that's taking place behind her. So she's in a daze, something is afoot. And then he turns Lois into a mannequin. So what's happening right now? Who is this guy? This man is in fact not a hunk, he's actually an imp from the 5th dimension. Close enough. His real name doesn't even translate into Earth's languages, but we collectively pronounce it as Mr. Mxyzptlk. He can manipulate anything and everything. He's nigh omnipotent and he's into feet. I think this guy is way too much for the DCEU in any way.